films in the United States, I think, particularly difficult. You know, you allude to co-production agreements, and the United States, for whatever reason, and I have my speculation, but has no treaties with any other country, nor any formal subsidies, although we do have these tax rebates driven by states, and there's also a federal rebate. But it's a very different system than what you have in Europe, in Canada, and I assume also in Latin America, which gives you kind of a floor or a basis that you can begin to put a film together. Here it's really a
like the Film Board of Canada.
Yeah, or any of the, or in every major
Western country.
Every major Western country has it, and I think a lot of countries around the world outside of Europe have it. In the U.S., really, I guess it's the sense that sort of it's this sort of successful, vibrant industry. Thus, we don't need a structure like that, and you certainly don't need it for Hollywood films. To find every way to sort of manipulate the system and get and for them to make profitable films. But for independent filmmakers, you know, it's extremely difficult. You know?
I mean, I was really surprised to see that we don't have treaties. Like, I know that Argentina does films with Spain. Cuba has gotten films produced with Spain, and so on. But I found interesting, Ry Cooder got $1.5 million from German public television, German and French public television, to do Buena Vista Social Club. So that's a US film, but it aired on German and French public television. So I found that interesting.
I mean, that's very common. I mean, again, Kids Are All Right. About 3/5 of the finance came out of France, out of UGC. I just did a film called Soul Power, which went to Sony in the Western Hemisphere, and then I went to a company called Cellular Dreams for the rest. But actually, the European was a much more lucrative and stable place from which to get financing from. You know, in fact, in that it was very interesting because there was the issue of who would take Latin America. Would it be Sony or would it be Cellular Dreams? And basically, both thought that it wasn't particularly valuable economically. So it sort of became this sort of side point, and they batted back, and finally went to Sony, which is somewhat unfortunate because they just they don't really promote it in a way that is kind of grassroots. They just put it out on TV and video. And
you were talking about distribution.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
As having done 15 films, and as you also just shared that, you know, a number of big, large companies have picked it up, do you still consider yourself an independent filmmaker?
Yeah, and I think the real distinction is I don't finance my films through studios. When I've sold to, you know, many majors, Fox or Sony or Focus, which is part of Universal. Nor do I have a studio deal. You know, they don't want to deal with me.
How viable has Latin America been for your 15 films as a distribution, you know, outlet that produces money?
You know, normally we don't see the money directly because it goes through a foreign sales agent, or like when we did 13, that went through Fox, so that was just the Fox global system. So there's not many ways where we see it that's monetized in a significant way, or at least in my experience. There may be ways to do it.
But is Latin America a major business market for you? Or is it an insignificant market, or?
For me, it's not. I've always tried to, I mean, I had real hope for Soul Power because a major portion of it is it's a film about a concert in Zaire in 1974, basically with R&B acts. Then, on top of that, you have the Fania All-Stars. It's amazing, you know, New York, but of course, Latin band. And I know, and when I hear back, it's been in festivals in Latin America, and people love the film, but it didn't necessarily connect to a business side. I think it's a similar thing that we're talking about. I think films that aren't, you know, these, you know, megalithic, you know, Hollywood crap, you know, it's hard to monetize, and really you're just sort of piecing together the pennies to sort of finance them and put them into the world, you know,
Gotcha.
in my experience.
In your experience. Fernando, as a lawyer, have you done any deals for co-productions, foreign financing of U.S. Latino filmmakers or otherwise?
Yes, I've worked on from the executive producer's financing perspective. which is the party that I represented, I worked on a project, a movie entitled La Soga, and it was written. It was written by the lead in the movie, and he was also one of the producers. He is, I may be I'm not entirely sure if he was born here in the States, or born in the Dominican Republic and reared in the States, but he's definitely of Washington Heights. His name is Matty Perez. And so the film was produced on location for the most part, almost entirely in the Dominican Republic. And being, the savvy, resourceful indie filmmakers that you need to be in the film business, you can't rely just simply on, an angel funder, entirely private equity. They, through another client of mine who's in the movie, contacted a company in the Dominican Republic that is in media in the Dominican Republic. They own a good number of the TV stations and the radio stations in the Dominican Republic and some print media. And they've also produced some films locally. The thing is that the films that they produce locally are meant for a local palette. And it's interesting that we were commenting earlier, because actually, at least in the Dominican Republic, their local films, they're not art house films, but their local films do better than the studio films. People in the Dominican Republic.
The U.S. studio films?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really shocking to me. I would have never thought that any film could beat Spider-Man 2 in the Dominican Republic, but they do, apparently. And I'm relying on my clients to tell me this, and consumers. When I was at a film festival there, the average consumer attested to that. Dominicans want to see their images there, and they want to go to see them. Now, the films in the Dominican Republic that are produced there and fully financed there, they cater to a particular palette, which tends to be highly influenced by the media there, which tends to be a good amount of the consumer or the viewership tends to be variety shows and soap operas. And as much as some people may balk at soap operas, we all know how well La Madrastra did here in the States when I forgot what year, 2 years ago, this soap opera beat even American ratings for the finales, right? So they understand that my clients, the film financiers, they understand that market. And so there isn't a co-production treaty with the Dominican Republic. Instead, the filmmakers entered into an agreement that involved a co-production arrangement. And as Jeff was saying earlier, it took on a sort of a pre-sale in exchange for a certain amount of money. My clients would get the right to distribute the film there in the Dominican Republic. Now, that being said, my clients only ventured into that because it was a film, again, filmed in the Dominican Republic about the Dominican Republic, about a particular element and a particular, it was a critique of a particular politic in the Dominican Republic, essentially corruption in the Dominican Republic. And so they felt that that was something that wasn't too foreign to them, and they could in all likelihood recoup if they couldn't recoup their investment from a sale in the United States, they felt they could certainly recoup their investment in the Dominican Republic because they've done it before. Their films, they fund their films anywhere between $300,000 and $800,000, and all of their films make them profit. They recoup their money and make a profit in the Dominican Republic. So they said we could probably do this with this, and they're still convinced they can. So there isn't a formal arrangement, but if you're a creative filmmaker and you have to be, especially nowadays when it's very difficult. It's always been difficult, as I understand, to get anyone to give you money. In fact, even at the film did well again at the Toronto Film Festival. At the after the screening, during the Q&A, one of the filmmakers, and he was, very excited to be obviously having his film at this Toronto Film Festival. He came and said, yeah, we were the typical sort of anecdote about how much they really worked and struggled to finance the film and get it done.